Hi and welcome back to openLCA video tutorials. Today we're going to talk about Ecoinvent 3.1. 3.1 has been available for openLCA since the summer of 2014, but we've changed the database a bit to give you more flexibility and more options in working with Ecoinvent. So at Ecoinvent you have three different system models: allocation default, long-term consequential, and cutoff. And these system models are broken down into unit process databases and system processes databases. So basically you have 6 different databases that you can import into openLCA up until now. But we've made a few changes and there are 2 big differences that we want to show you today. So what's new? Number 1, the process IDs are now different between system and unit processes, which for you means that you can now combine system and unit processes into the same openLCA database. And number 2 is that the flow reference IDs have been harmonized between system models, which means that it is now possible to use your own datasets in all system models, regardless of which system model was used to create the datasets. That seems a bit abstract, so let's take a look at what that looks like in openLCA. So let's look at the first one I wanted to make, that you can now combine system and unit processes in the same openLCA database. We do recommend that if you're going to do this, you're working with at least version 1.4.1 beta 5 or higher. I've got beta 6 running here. I will put the link to the latest version in the description box below. The second thing you need to make sure to do is to download all of the databases that you'd like to import into openLCA at the Nexus website beforehand, which I have already done. So let's import our database. As always, right-click in the navigation window and click on Import Database. And here I have all of my Ecoinvent databases. So as you can see, I've got the allocation default Zolka, which means that it is the unit processes database. And if it says LCI, that's referring to the system processes database. So the next thing to look at is if you're going to combine 2 different databases, for example, allocation default system and unit processes into one openLCA database, that you import the database that is larger first. So the allocation default system processes database is just over 1 gigabyte and the other is only 53 megabytes. So we're going to import the system process databases first. Okay, so now we have our Ecoinvent 3.1 allocation default system process database imported into openLCA. So let's open it up, and now I want to include the allocation default unit process databases in there. So I right click and click on import, select database import from an exported Zolka file and browse, and here I have the allocation default Zolka. So I will open that and select finish. So now the import of the unit processes database is complete, so I'm going to rename this database so I know in the future that it's both. So system and unit. Okay, so let's take a look at a process. Just any random process. Okay, so here you can already see in the folders that you can recognize between system and unit processes as the names have been changed so you can recognize them. Let's open up this process, dairy construction allocation default unit. And if you look at the inputs, you can see that you already have under default provider, you have the option to select whether you want to use the unit process or the system process. And the same goes for the product system level. So let's create a product system. I'm not going to add processes, so I can make a point. And let's look at the model graph. So here's our process. And if I want to search for the providers for the inputs, let's say I want to search providers for the copper, then I also have here the option to choose between the system and unit processes that I want to add and connect. Okay, so that's the first point we wanted to make. Now we want to look at what is the second point, which was that the flow reference IDs have been harmonized between system models, which means that it's now possible to use your own data sets in all system models, irrelevant which system model you use to create it. So here we have allocation default, and let's say we're going to create a new process. Let's say we're going to produce fleece and transport it to gate. So let's say fleece at gate. Let's say we're going to use mass. Okay. So let's close these. Okay, here's our fleece gate. Now we want to add some input. Let's look for fleece production, manufacturing. Okay, so fleece production global. Perfect. Okay, and now let's add some transport with ship, let's say. Transport, freight, ship. Okay, let's say we're going to transport a ton of fleece from Asia to Europe, which is, I don't know, 15,000 ton kilometers times 1, basically. Is that right? No, that's 1,500. There. Okay, and our amount, 1 ton. Okay, so we could basically create a product system and calculate the effects of this process for allocation default. But let's say I want to compare those results to what this process would be in using a different model system, or a different system model rather. So let's import a new database. Let's import the consequential long-term unit processes database. Here it is. And I can actually export the process that I just created. Say right-click on export. Let's export this process as ILCD. Let's search for the process. Where's my directory? Desktop. That's okay. So export that. Open up our consequential long-term database and import ILCD. Here's the zip file we just created. And under processes, here's our process that we just created. You can look at the inputs. And here now I have the option to select the consequential long-term as the default provider. And then I can create a product system and calculate it using this system model. So that's everything we wanted to show you today for Ecoinvent 3.1. If you have any comments or you'd like to request a tutorial you'd like to see, feel free to contact us or leave a comment in the section below. And until next time.